Well, good evening, and apologies for the minor delay. I'll also ask for your forgiveness in advance here. Dealing with a couple of technical issues on my end. The internet wasn't working, a couple of my social media feeds weren't connecting to the streaming app that we use, but I think I've got everything figured out at this point. Because I was dealing with all that, I don't have everything set up that I normally would at this point, so yeah, I'm going to be doing a little extra fiddling around, lining some graphics up in the background, but that's live social media. I would say it's live TV, but we're not on TV. That's live anything. It's real. So without further ado, let's just jump right over to the radar, because for the first time in 2 weeks, we've got measurable rain in the valley, measurable snow in the Sierra. And I was talking about this earlier in our shows. The numbers that we see out of this today, tonight, and tomorrow, they're not going to be impressive for February, but they're going to be some of the best numbers that we've seen over the last month. But of course, that's because the bar for the last month is set pretty darn low. So Sacramento getting a little bit of a break in the rain. We haven't seen all that much just yet. I'm actually going to call up the rainfall totals here on my end. If you are watching, if you have a rain gauge at home, or if you've been driving around, let me know in the comments what you've been seeing. You can help me out that way. We'll get the official numbers from the National Weather Service here in just a moment. Also nice to see some good snow in the Sierra. The snow level's been dropping through the evening. You can kind of see on the radar initially where there's that green circle, that's Lake Tahoe. As that disappears, the green becomes white. That's a sign that the snow level has now dropped down below lake level. They're not going to see a lot of snow in South Lake Tahoe or Tahoe City or Truckee, just because of the trajectory of the rain and the snow. It's just not in a good position. But they'll get some, and that's good. The resorts will do better, the summits will do better. But we've got more to come next week, and we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. All right, I've got our precipitation map queued up here. But yeah, this is all really good to see. So how are we doing so far? These are 24-hour totals, and these update on this website about every 15 minutes or so. So we're starting out wide here. Zoom in. Let's see, what's this? 0.3, 3/10 of an inch of rain. That's at Emigrant Gap, not too far from Nyack, where, yeah, it has just been rain to this point. See some of the numbers, a few hundredths around Roseville, a couple hundredths up towards Penryn. Nice to see this, about a quarter of an inch in parts of Amador County. This is Sutter Creek right here. Clinton, just over a quarter of an inch of rain. Wallace, a couple tenths of an inch of rain. So far the best rain has been on the east side of the valley. I mean, look at this. This is Mormon Slough near Linden in eastern Sacramento County. About a quarter of an inch of rain. Or eastern San Joaquin County, excuse me. But you come down to Stockton, shy of a tenth of an inch of rain so far. And so far at Executive Airport in Sacramento, just a couple hundredths of an inch of rain. So we've got a ways to go. But nice to see these numbers here on the east side of the valley. Arnold, well, it depends on the gauge you're looking at, and this is where the terrain really plays a role. Close to a half an inch of rain at this gauge on Banner Road, but the Calaveras Ranger Station, about 15 hundredths of an inch of rain. So again, that's what we've got so far. Here's where we are right now. Galt, a little shower coming your way, showery on the north side of Stockton. Some wet weather from Discovery Bay, down through Livermore, going up and over the Altamont Pass. There's some rain there. Likely some dropped visibility too. Still raining steadily in Tuolumne County. That snow level way up above Sonora, above Arnold even. It's been kind of hovering around 6,000 feet so far. But it is nice to see this all filled in over Donner Summit, and of course, nice if you want to build up a snowpack, not so nice if you're trying to travel somewhere. The white, that's the snow. The green, that's the rain. The pink, that's where the radar thinks things are switching over from rain to snow, and it tends to do a pretty good job. So in this case, the rain-snow line right around Cisco Grove, just up above Yuba Pass. I just drove down through that way yesterday on my way back from Palisades. Nice to be up there during a dry day. Some light snow in South Lake Tahoe on Highway 50. That snow line, we got to zoom in pretty far. Kybers. Yep, that's a pretty typical spot. So cars likely having to chain up there in Kybers. You need them all the way into Myers. Kirkwood now getting some good snow. Same with Markleyville. Much of Highway 88 in the high country. Getting some good snow. Chain controls have been up on 88 for the last little while. And it's going to stay that way through tonight and into tomorrow morning too. Shanna is asking about snow in Pollock Pines next Monday and Tuesday. She says, I know it's early. Yes, it is early. And I always hesitate to give specifics like that when we're talking a week out. Pollock Pines around 4,000 feet to 4,500 depending on where you are. I wouldn't be surprised if we get some snow down to Pollock Pines at some point next week. Now, can I tell you how much or when? Still too early for that, but next week, stormier and colder. That's the more important part, especially for building up a snowpack. The cold air up in the high country, of course, means that snow accumulates much more easily. It's that nice powdery snow that we could be getting. And of course, if the air is colder at the summits, it's colder down in the valley. It's colder in between. The snow level is lower. So, Shanna, I'm going to give you an early yes on that. That snow is a good possibility at this point in a spot like Pollock Pines. How much lower below that does it get? That's something we're going to wait a little bit more on. But you haven't had much snow down at 4,000 feet so far this season. So that would be good to go. Later this week is when we're going to start to zero in on the snow levels for next week. So we'll get you a better idea before we get into the weekend, so you folks around 4,000 feet, maybe even 3,000 feet, can start to kind of mentally get ready for that. And, physically get ready if you got to run to the hardware store for anything like that. We are going to talk more about the pattern for next week in a little bit, but let's first start with where we are. Let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. Anybody want to chime in with what movie I just quoted? Hint, it's a musical. All right, so this is FutureCast. This is our in-house model. Does a pretty good job. We actually just found out from the company that we buy our data from. Normally we get this model updated 4 times a day. Starting later this week, it's going to update 12 times a day. Meteorologists like that. More data, more information, usually a good thing. So we'll see how that does. Overnight tonight, not a lot of new rain for Sacramento, Stockton, or Modesto, but it's going to stay damp. Wouldn't be surprised if there's a few rumbles of thunder here through the East Bay, maybe into Solano County, parts of Yolo County, just as that band of heavier rain starts to move through. For you early morning commuters, rain most likely on the west side of the Sacramento Valley. There may not be a whole lot going on around Sacramento, Stockton, or Modesto, but again, bring the umbrella, bring the rain jacket. Even if it's not raining where you are when you wake up tomorrow morning, just the nature of things tomorrow afternoon. You see here, it's going to be hit and miss. If you don't wake up with rain, there's still a good chance that you'll get something throughout the day. So it's 3:30 in the afternoon, so school pickup, hit and miss showers again. Maybe a heavier thunderstorm moving up into the foothills here. We are not expecting anything severe. I just want to underline that. This is not going to be, like what we were talking about in January with the potential for any kind of stronger thunderstorm cells. This is just downpours with embedded thunder. You can see even through tomorrow evening, it's still going to be damp. It's still going to be wet along parts of 80. We will likely be drying out in the Sierra by this point. So there will be chain controls. We have chain controls now in the mountains. They're probably going to be there for the first half of the day tomorrow, but things will get better as we go into the second half of the day tomorrow. Thursday, we dry things out. There may be some fog that settles in. Depends how much of a breeze we get, but Thursday's dry. There's the fog on Friday morning. Friday is also dry. So today, tonight, tomorrow, showery, no washouts, nothing we can't handle. It's just been a while, so we saw, unfortunately, a fair number of accidents during the evening commute on Tuesday. People got to get get with it with their winter driving skills again. So there may be more of that during the morning commute tomorrow. Just, if you drive more than a half hour or so to get to where you're going, leave yourself extra time, because of course the longer you're on the road, the more opportunity there is for something to happen. So that's a look at kind of the next 24 hours. The most exciting thing about it is that it's the most exciting thing we've had in a few weeks. If we had had consistent rain and snow for the past few weeks, this would just be another shot of rain and snow. I'm not calling this a storm. We're not calling this a storm as a group. It's not stormy, it's just wet. It's the kind of rain and snow that, it's just kind of there. But I am working on queuing up. This will cooperate for me. Queuing up some of our longer range models here so we can take a look at next week. And remember, as I think it was Shanna asked a question about polypines. She mentioned it's early. Yeah, it is early to get specific. But what I like about what I'm about to show you is that the pattern, the overall ideas of cold and stormy, those have been holding consistent for the past almost week at this point, maybe like 4 or 5 days, which is good to see. When the overall idea is the same, we can feel pretty confident that we're going to get something out of this. What's changing is the specific timing, when these waves of moisture come in, just how cold it's going to be, so that determines things like snow level, how much snow we see, things like that. But the overall idea is that next week is going to be cold, and we're going to see several shots of some moisture coming in here. So I'm going to back this up to this afternoon's model. And we're starting with the American model. There's actually been really good agreement between two of the major weather models that we look at. One is the American model, the GFS. The other is the European model. And somebody asked me, well, why would we use the European model? We have our own models. More information is better. We look to make sure that there's agreement between the two models. If there isn't agreement, that means we have lower confidence, especially if it's within a week. But these two models have been pretty synced up recently, which, in addition to the day-to-day consistency, model-to-model consistency only adds to the confidence that we see. So this is where we are right now. Got that area of low pressure sitting off the coast, and it's just going to kind of see those closed lines there. That's the center of the low. That's just going to kind of sit and spin through tomorrow, but it pulls away on Thursday. So that's why we dry out on Thursday. Make it a little bit of a breeze behind it. Friday's also dry. Remember, we could start with fog. And this is Saturday morning. Also dry. If you're making plans for your Saturday, Saturday is clear for all of California. There may be some fog in the morning again, and clouds will be increasing. But, of course, Saturday is Valentine's Day. I think it's also President's Weekend. So if you're making plans for your Saturday, you're good there. Sunday, I'm going to say be flexible. I'm cautiously optimistic, though, because the trend over the last couple of days is that the models have kind of backed up the timing a little bit, meaning instead of starting sometime on Sunday, it's probably starting sometime on Monday instead. So that's good news for a weekend. Be relatively easy to get around. This is about 7 o'clock Sunday morning, so some rain's starting to move into the north coast. It doesn't really pick up until 4 o'clock Sunday evening, but even then, this would be in the coastal hills, this would be in Humboldt County. It's still clear in the Sierra, so travel in the mountains should be okay on Sunday. That's how it looks right now, but remember I said keep your plans flexible and keep an eye on this forecast, because there's room for the timing to shift back earlier. But we'll see. This is where we start to get into the, where I recommend if you don't have to travel in the mountains, don't. This is 15Z on Monday, Zulu time, so Greenwich Mean Time. For us, this would be 7 o'clock on Monday morning. So the snow's already gone by the time the sun comes up. We'll have rain in the valley, kind of comes in rounds. And then notice how one wave of rain and snow, then we get, this is Tuesday, another wave of rain and snow. That one's heavier. And then it's still kind of going on, but tapering off on Wednesday, so it becomes a little bit more showery. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're in line for some pretty good precipitation. But one detail I want to point out to you, and this is getting in the weeds a little bit here. This purple line right here, that's what we call the 540 thickness line. Thickness is a measure of the distance between pressure levels in the atmosphere. So between 1,000 millibars, which tends to be right at the surface, and between 500 millibars, which is, you know, tens of thousands of feet up in the air. When that thickness gets lower, the air is colder. So cold air, more compact, lower thicknesses. This line here is kind of a benchmark that meteorologists look for where temperatures at the mid-levels of the atmosphere are going to drop below freezing. So when you see this 540 thickness line pass over the Sierra, now it's dragged out here. This is Tuesday. That's a sign that we're getting into some cold air. And by cold, I mean next Monday and Tuesday. We have high temperatures for Sacramento right now, forecast around 51, 52. If we get enough rain and cloud cover, I would not be surprised if there are valley spots early next week that stay in the 40s. So if the valley is that cold, you take it up to the mountains where high temperatures, depending on your elevation, upper 20s to low 30s, which means that snow level is going to be dropping. So yeah, that purple line, that thickness line, when that drops to the south, that's a sign that we're in for some cold air. And we'll look at temperatures in just a second. But Tuesday right now looks like the day where we get the heavy snow. That could be a day where we get some of that lower snow too. And again, I'm intentionally not talking how low, but this continues even into Wednesday. All right, just out of curiosity, let's look at some of the numbers. I've seen some wild snow numbers getting thrown out, usually by what we jokingly call social meteorologists. It's a play on word there. There's a lot of junk that gets put on social media. I saw something yesterday, somebody sent me, it was a meteorologist in Texas tweeting raw model data showing, you know, over 100 inches of snow for the Sierra. Someone asked me, oh, is this possible? And my response was, yeah, it's possible, but that's a snow map over 2 weeks. What we preach here is that anything beyond a week, and especially anything beyond 10 days, it's not going to be reliable. Our forecast models are getting better and better every day, especially now that, you know, we're starting to incorporate some artificial intelligence technology in that. Not we as in KCRA, but, you know, the research community is starting to look into that. But we're not there yet. So what can I tell you about this pattern? Next week is going to be cold and it's going to be wet. That's a recipe for some great snow. But the information that you need, when is it going to snow? How low is the snow going to be? How much snow am I going to see in any one given day? What are the good days for me to travel in the mountains? That we just can't tell you at this point. And that's something where, you know, somebody posting a 2-week snow map just isn't helpful. It does make you feel good about the potential for the snowpack in California. And this is good. This is the pattern change that we need. So this is through next Wednesday. So we're going out 8 days here. And it all just depends on where the cursor lands here. But this is probably one of the higher peaks, close to 90 inches of snow. Yep, these are definitely the higher peaks in Tuolumne County, over 90 inches of snow. But you see here some of those numbers getting down into potentially the foothills. I'm not going to slide over those numbers, that's intentional. What can give us more information though? This is the 24-hour accumulation, so we'll kind of break it down day by day here. So over the next 24 hours, we'll pick up another maybe 4 to 6 inches of snow over Donner and Echo Summit. Bigger numbers as you come down to the South Sierra, because those mountains of course sit a little bit higher, so over a foot of snow there. But those, again, those accumulations are, you know, 8,000 or 9,000 feet. But good to add to the snowpack. Thursday's dry, Friday's dry, Saturday's dry. Sunday we're not going to see any problematic snow. All right, here's Monday's 24-hour accumulation. So how much accumulates between like midnight Sunday, Monday into midnight Monday, Tuesday. So basically during the day on Monday. This is where we could see over a foot of snow in a day over the summits. That's some pretty good snow. But if we drag this out to, here's the 24-hour accumulation for Tuesday. Remember I pointed out Tuesday, next Tuesday is the heavy snow day. This is where we could see 2 to 3 feet of snow in a 24-hour period. And remember, this is all hinging on the timing of this staying the same, which it has the potential to change. This would also be our day where we see those lower snow levels. Here's the amount of snow we see through the day on Wednesday. Again, just focusing on Donner Necco Summit. Lesser amounts. So what that tells me is Tuesday stands out as the day to definitely not travel in the Sierra. I think travel might be doable on Monday. Tuesday's the day where, for now, looks like we get the heavy snow next week. And then Wednesday, even though the snow lets up, if you've ever tried to travel in the mountains the day after a few feet of snow falls, you know it's a mess. So Wednesday's probably a hold off kind of day there too. And then we'll see what happens beyond that next week. There are more systems that may be lined up, which is good. As far as the snowpack goes, that's great. All right, so I did a lot of talking. Let's take a look at some of the comments here. Greg's asking what's the major difference between the American and the European models. You know, fundamentally, they're not that different. Both models kind of work on the same idea of you plug in current conditions, they solve a set of, we call them the governing equations that, you know, do things like fluid dynamics and how the atmosphere works. They solve those equations and then they extrapolate out. The European model, slightly higher resolution than the American model. In some cases, it tends to do a little bit better with certain things. Here on the West Coast, it can be iffy. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's really not. It's just nice that, you know, when there's two different models, you compare them and you see if they agree. Yeah, Scott says, haven't had any good snow at 4,000 feet this year. That could be changing early next week. That's how it looks, especially for next Tuesday. So for those at 4,000 feet that are asking about potential snow, yeah, the potential is there for next week. Let's see if I can call up the KCRA page here. If you're just joining me, I had some technical issues to start, so I'm not fully set up here. I'm calling up the KCRA page now. Susan on the KCRA page is asking about the foothills, specifically around Pioneer. Susan, is there a specific day you were looking for advice on? And then Teresa is asking, how much rain in the valley on Tuesday? Teresa, are you talking about today's totals, or are you talking about next Tuesday? A little too early to talk about rain amounts for next Tuesday, but you know, with this round, we were thinking, you know, maybe a quarter to a half an inch. Next Tuesday, the way it looks, it could be closer to an inch plus. All right, I told you we were going to talk temperatures here. So why don't we do that? So remember, I told you next week is going to be quite chilly. Now, one caveat here with this model that we're looking at, this is, again, the GFS model. It's not very high resolution. So for specific point temperature forecasting, it's a guideline. We usually make adjustments on the numbers based on what we as meteorologists know about a specific area. As we know the biases of these models. We know when they tend to be too warm and when they tend to be too cool. So this is tomorrow. It's got a 54 there for Sacramento. We nudged that number up a little bit. When rainstorms come through, it just tends to be a little cool. This is Thursday. Back close to 60 degrees. Thursday's the day the sun comes out, so we'll be in the lower 60s. This is Friday. Again, a dry day, a day where we see some fog in the morning but some sun in the afternoon. Low 60s, but notice we're not talking the 70s that we had for almost a week straight. We've got cooler air moving in overhead. Saturday, close to 60 degrees again. Saturday's a dry day. Sunday. Sunday looks dry for the valley, but if you're going to be along the north coast, that's where the rain starts to move in. All right, and remember, Monday's where we start getting into the rain and the snow. This is where the American model on Monday has us staying in the upper 40s. We bumped the number for now up into the lower 50s. We only added like 4 degrees, so it's not a huge difference, but you get the idea. Temperatures drop a good 10 degrees, and we've got the rain in the mix. It's going to feel much cooler than that. Here's Tuesday. And remember, that's when that next shot of cold air and rain and potentially heavy snow is coming in. Mid-40s in the valley. Again, as forecasters, we added a few degrees. But I think it's realistic to think that, you know, if a spot stays stuck under rain long enough, there could be some spots in the valley next Tuesday that stay in the 40s. You go up into the foothills. It's hard to tell. This doesn't put out an elevation with my cursor. But there's going to be spots, certainly at 5,000 or 6,000 feet, that are easily staying in the 30s. And we're going to have to see how far down the hill that freezing line gets. But Tuesday's going to be a day that feels cold, especially for Californians. Wednesday, another chilly day, another day where there may be some valley spots that are staying in the 40s. I'm thinking low 50s. Remember, Wednesday's the day where we start to dry things out a little bit. But yeah, look at this into Thursday. Even Thursday, we've still got 40s and low 50s. That's some really cold air up in the higher elevations. Yeah, temperatures single digits to 0 degrees, and that's in the afternoon. But that's also at 10,000 feet or so. And even next weekend, I mean, we're getting way out there at this point. But the takeaway for next week is that we're not going to see a day in the 70s, even if we do see some clearing. Now, it's going to be temperatures in the 40s for a lot of the day in the valley, with highs just kind of barely peaking into the lower 50s, and that's going to last throughout the week. So for the foothills, I would expect, you know, temperatures, depending on your elevation, upper 30s to mid 40s. It's going to be chilly. So winter is back. Be prepared for that. Again, things like snow levels, snow amounts. We'll get some more specific here before the end of this week. Help you out a little bit, let you to have a dry weekend to get ready. Yeah, this is a really interesting pattern, and this is, you know, when you get into a dry stretch of 4 or 5 weeks like what we've had, this is what you want to see coming for the snowpack. For anybody that's trying to get up and over the summits, yeah, next week is just not going to be good. Brian says he's watching USA curling gold medal match. Yeah, the Olympics they're always fun to follow. I saw a video posted of, I don't know if it was Nordic skiing or just cross-country skiing, but the guy was going uphill on his skis, running much faster than I could on dry pavement in regular road sneakers. It's amazing when I've heard people say before that they'd like to see an average person compete in the same events as these Olympians, because they're amazing. They're superhumans. It's fun to watch. Casey is asking, is wintry mix safe to drive in? I think that depends on a couple of things. Number one, how conservatively are you driving? If you drive carefully, it can be, and hopefully everybody else around you is driving carefully too. Number two, the wintry mix. It depends on the recipe of the mix. If it's snow and sleet, yeah, it makes things kind of gritty. Your tires can get some grip. You need to go slow, but it's definitely better than a freezing rain and sleet mix. Freezing rain is never safe to drive in. I don't care how new your tires are, how good your brakes are. It's a slick surface, you slam on the brakes, your car's going to keep going. So, Casey, it all boils down to how safe of a driver you and the people around you are. Yeah, and Teresa, sorry, I'm following up a few minutes late, asking about the rain forecast for the valley next Tuesday. Well, just out of curiosity, let's take a look at the models they're showing. And Teresa, I'll show you this, but with the caveat that this could certainly change. But we'll go with the 24-hour, let's go with the 12-hour precipitation accumulation. And we'll just go with during the day on Tuesday. Actually, let's do it this way. All right, so here we are. This is what will have accumulated, or what could have accumulated in the valley by the time we get to Tuesday. And I will say this model is almost always overdone. But you see the idea that with a couple rounds, maybe a couple of inches of wet weather for the north end of the valley, and a few inches into the foothills. This is when the sun comes up Tuesday morning. We're at 2.5. And by the time the sun comes up Wednesday morning, this particular model shows about 1/2 inch of rain for the valley. So you could extrapolate that out to maybe a couple of inches of rain up into the foothills. But again, Teresa, at 7-8 days out, it's just, our models just don't have the resolution to get you the specifics. But Tuesday could be a wet day. Do I think flooding at this point? No, because we're going to have a nice dry break before this comes in. But Teresa, Tuesday does have the potential to be a wet day. I'm going to do another one of these lives on Thursday. Hopefully we'll be able to get you a little bit more detail there.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
All right. So we've been talking for about a half hour now. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks to work in the weather department. So I'll end just by showing you the 7-day forecast. Just take some time to load up here. So there's the 7-day that Dirk and I put together this afternoon. Tomorrow, an impact day. It's going to be rain that we can handle. You just got to remember to be able to handle your driving in the rain. It's certainly not a washout, just hit and miss showers, a few downpours. We're dry Thursday, we're dry Friday, we're dry Saturday. The coast will have some rain on Sunday. Some of that may move inland late in the evening, but you got a lot of dry time on Sunday too. So your plans this weekend, driving in the Sierra, going out for dinner for Valentine's Day, whatever your plans are. I don't think the weather's going to be too much of a bother this weekend, so that's some good news there. But Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, and as I showed you Wednesday, days where we're going to have some good rain in the valley, some soaking rain into the foothills. Remember, Tuesday is the day for right now. That looks like we could see some of that heavier snow, so this will be exciting to watch. I'll be sharing updates on my social media feeds as we get a clearer picture of what we're going to be seeing. And of course, you're welcome to send me your forecast questions anytime on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I check them all throughout the day. Yeah, this is going to be fun. Stick with us here at KCRA. We're going to be tracking it for you as we go through the next week or so. Have a good night. I'll be on